immigration as illegal. They also maintain family unification, relatives of citizens, parents and adults, minor, children, siblings, and spouses. Then it also created occupation preferences for skilled immigrants and guest worker H-2A program for agricultural workers. Alright, now eventually you have school desegregation. NAACP helped lead this desegregation opportunity to participate in the economic system. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka. Then you have public demonstrations to take action, we already talked about. And then you have a lack of supervision to make sure segregation ended. Very slow process. Once the middle 60s came, very quickly it desegregated in many parts, but not everyone. You have the CORE, the SNCC, and the SCLC, which I already mentioned, which were organized. Now, 1952, we have Immigration and Nationality Act, the McCarran and Walter Act. Immigration policy determined by the Cold War. All racial barriers to immigration and naturalization were removed, but maintained the Asian-Pacific Triangle. National origin quotas remained despite President Truman's veto. And then admitted refugees from communist countries, 1953 Refugee Relief Act, and the family reunification expanded to wives and husbands, as we talked about before. Here's just a chart of the average annual immigration levels in American history. 1601, 1775 is very low, but eventually you see once it gets to 1989 to the present, it goes up. After 1968 or 66 to 1988 is also a very large influx. Now, other civil rights movement. You got Chicano movement with Brown Power, the American Indian movement with Red Power, and the Asian American movement with Yellow Power. We'll speak about those for just a few minutes. Brown Power, you had Mexican Americans in 1960. You have a geographical isolated. Really what they do, they would go and many Mexican Americans, they would live in the same areas because they were comfortable with one another. Issues with that is it really hurt language, learning different languages, and them get out and be exposed to different cultures and ideas. The median income was 62% of the general population, very low. Over 1/3 of Mexican families subsisted on less than $3,000 per year. Unemployment rate was twice that of non-Latinos, and then 4/5, 80%, employed in semi-skilled or unskilled, with 1/3 of those in agriculture. It's where you can see there really need to be a change in the education system and push these individuals to being educated. In 1968, you had a bilingual education legislation. You have La Raza Unida, and the Congress of Mexican American Unity, MAU, and the United Mexican American Students. They fought fee and tuition increases. They're registered and informed Chicano voters, and they fought for cultural integrity. You got Crystals, Texas. You got LULAC, which was the League of United Latin American Citizens. Really try to help to bring an eye to people, or the idea to people that it's important for them to be educated, that they didn't need to rely on unskilled labor, that it needed to be more of a multicultural education and not go with just the flow of things. You have Cesar Chavez, who was working for the United Workers Union to try to help these workers that were working on farms to get better pay and better benefits. All right, now going to Red Power. You have the Tuscarano Indians, the National Indian Youth Council, the Indian Historical Society that was formed, Native American Rights Fund, which was formed. You have the American Indian Movement, which was very important, very large. It occupied the Office of Bureau of Indian Affairs, occupied Wounded Knee in South Dakota. They also occupied Alcatraz, very important. They fought for equality in education, for equality in rights as far as with wages and things of that nature. In 1961, 450 Indians attended the American Indian Chicago Conference into termination policies. It was John F. Kennedy, who is more of an Indian participation in decisions involving federal policies then. The whole AIM Act really changed his idea on this. The struggle for self-determination of the Pan Indian movement. Now, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and disabled Americans relied on the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to pursue the equality under the law. The courts have ruled that schools must provide education for students with limited English, and that illegal immigrants must be granted education and medical care. After hundreds of years of maltreatment by the federal government, Native Americans began to mobilize in the 1960s with the founding of the American Indian movement, which I already spoke about. By the 1970s, the government began to give Indians more control over their land and what they could do with it. This is where you have reservations and Indian schools and things of that nature. Now, you have Bilingual Act in 1968. The Act mandated that schools provide bilingual education programs that provided federal funding to encourage local school districts to try approaches incorporating native language instruction. This was the first time the U.S. Congress had endorsed funding for bilingual education. Very important. Now you can start to see a change that it's going to be more of a multicultural society or education. In education now, it's not going to be one-sided. We're not going to try to destroy another person's culture, especially Indians, which we've seen for hundreds of years. And this was a very big act that was passed. You have the Indian Self-Determination Education Assistance Act, aimed to maximize tribal participation in planning and administration of the federal services and programs, and to reduce federal bureaucracy in those programs. You have the Tribal Controlled School Act now, where the tribes actually control the schools that run them, and the Native American Language Act in 1990. Conflicts of red power, you have Mennonite tribes versus the U.S., and you have the legislation that was enacted, tribal decision-making power, and adoptions of Indian children, and improved the health care. The Asian experience, much different. During this time, you had the model minority view, which became very popular. It contrasted to the black experience and obscured the reality of the Asian experience and issues they dealt with. The term model minority was coined in the mid-1960s by William Peterson to describe Asian Americans as ethnic minorities who, despite marginalization, had achieved success in the United States. Here are some facts. Asian American immigrants to the U.S. have been highly self-selected. Asian Americans form one of our smallest minorities. Asians are 3.2% of the populations. Asian Americans still bump into the glass ceiling, receive lower pay, even with the same qualifications, which is completely wrong. And income inequality is severe with the Asian American community. Here's the Asian group poverty levels. I'm not going to go into those. Now you got the Multicultural Education, Immigration, and Cultural Wars. In 1965, the Immigration Act that abolished the 1924 Immigration Act and the quota system. It was a multicultural education rose after this. Now talking about No Child Left Behind. Dealing with these issues is very important because it brings about bilingual education and really makes people focus on this. And I know No Child Left Behind, being an educator, there's a lot of pros and cons to it, the testing, and we teach the test things like that, and that's things I do not like. But there are some good things that really help, especially bilingual education. The Act was released with the Bilingual Education Elementary Secondary Act in 1945. The Act mandates that each state must measure every public school student's progress in reading and math from the 3rd grade through the 8th grade. Further, the progress must be measured at least once between the 10th and 12th grades.